and so it's very different how different states of consciousness and how we think actually affects our intuition. And when I go into those cartoon states, I would say that I'm completely in the moment, completely in now. And the more you're in now, the more you're in the right part of the brain to receive intuition. You cannot go out and get intuition. You have to receive it. And so to receive it, you have to be in some kind of stillness or some kind of altered state of consciousness. So for me, for somatic intuition, I go dancing. So because when I'm moving my body is releasing all of the intuitive things. When I go to sleep, I go into different states of consciousness, and so I'll wake up sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning with a brainwave, and so I have to write that down. And so, yes, so absolutely different states. So you need to be in the receiving part of yourself more than the doing part of yourself. And that can literally just take 2 minutes. Sometimes if I'm having a really, really busy day business-wise and I've got all of these different things and I'll get an email from someone and I think I need to respond to that really quickly, and then something will go, I'm missing something. That might be the moment that I then go and take the dog for a walk and I just stop everything and I don't react to that email. Or I just go and take 2 minutes away, think about it, and then I'll suddenly realise, if I reply, yes, I can do that, to that email, what I also need to add is, and then can we do a workshop off the back of that, or then can I also blah, 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 can I post this film on your website? There'll be things I would have missed. And to then follow it up with a second email of an afterthought, I wouldn't do because it comes across as unprofessional to me. So sometimes I'll get that, and it'll just be like just before the send button. I actually have it set up on Gmail that I can cancel my send. I've got a few seconds to cancel it. Because quite often I'll send something and they go, oh no, and it's like a physical reaction. And I'll go, okay, and then I need to go back over that email and there's something else I need to add, and I just leave it in my drafts until I've got a moment for that intuitive download to hit. So yes, I do think it's all about that. And again, because the brain's just miraculous and there's so many different ways in which we know what we know, but we just still think that we have to think about everything. Annoying. Other questions?
I just wanted something. I find sometimes that things around me do it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering what's going on. For example, I found that automatically an email's gone into the draft, and I haven't said that I realise why.
Yeah.
Or something's got lost. I can't find it, and there's a reason that I've got to
kind of
yeah. It's almost. I just wondered what you felt was happening there, because it does feel as though it's an extension of something happening.
I just think that there's two things there. I'll come at from the basic sort of like what's happening there is that you know certain things and you react instinctively to what you know beyond the words in your head. So you know things beyond the words in your head, a little bit like how there were no animals found at the tsunami. They had all gone to higher ground, So I don't think that they had this kind of like sort of like squirrel conversation. Hey, listen, I think that there's a tsunami coming. I think that we ought to just go up this mountain. It was just an instinctive movement. And if you've ever been driving a car and you suddenly take your foot off the accelerator, and there's a moment you go, I don't know why I'm slowing down, and then all the brake lights hit, and you would have hit the car in front if you hadn't slowed down. You weren't following the 2-second rule. So instinctively sometimes these things just kind of like come out of who we are. Now the more esoteric look at it is that we're all connected to a collective consciousness. So, and I see this whenever I'm talking to a room full of people. You come in, you're all different songs, you're all different theme tunes, then you harmonise. And that's why I like using music at the top of my talks, because that music harmonised you all, so but I have an even plan. No, it's a very nice plan. But it harmonises, and so in a way, what then happens when you're all listening to one person talking, you start to form a particular hum and you all kind of come together. So then what that means is you feel other people. And you would know that from if you, in a long-term relationship, you know what's going on with your other half. You just know. And then you think, oh no, maybe I'm being paranoid, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. But you do know. Mothers know what's going on with their kids. In the days before mobile phone, when you said, text me, you knew that they were up to no good. And again, sat-navs, get to the end of the road, left or right, left, and it would be the right direction. So a lot of the time, we are connected in so many ways that we fail to really recognise. Now, the other thing with that I feel that the world is constantly talking to us. So, you know, in olden days when people used to kind of like, say old days, people still do this, but I like to think it's gone. When people consult tarot cards or scry into crystal balls or use rune stones or anything like that, they are looking for inspiration which opens the right hemisphere of the brain. So when you're looking at pictures, it opens the right hemisphere of the brain. So therefore, we are surrounded by pictures in advertising. So you're surrounded by tarot cards. You are surrounded by fluffy clouds that look like higgs. You are surrounded by things that speak to you. So the world, again, what we're saying about that cartoon state, the world suddenly turns into a cartoon state where you feel like everything's kind of communicating with you. Now, of course, I'm very aware, at the same time as saying that mental people sometimes think that too. But you still have to use that level of discernment. Just because I fancy somebody called Eddie, every single time an Eddie Stobart truck goes past does not mean that I'm meant to be with Eddie. You know, so there are certain things, because it can sort of start to drive you a bit into kind of like, this is meant to be. Well, nothing is meant to be. So just because you're thinking my intuition is telling me that I must be with Eddie because of the truck, that's blind hope, desperate thinking. Like I said, this is not an autobiographical talk. Other questions?
How do you tell the difference between blind, desperate thinking?
Yeah, blind, desperate. Well, do you know, when I figured that one out, I'll write a book, because, you know, to be honest, I think it is so human to want something really badly that you look for signs that it's meant to be. You know, it is so human to do that, and I think that can be absolutely about anything, really. I mean, I'm an author, and I really want this book to be a bestseller. Of course, I do. You know, the amount of time that you spent on it, and also it feels to me like that this feels so important to get out into the world, and I'm sure every author feels like that. You know, so what makes my book in W.H. Smith's at the moment, and Waterstones. And sorry, calm. That's a miracle in itself, to get really a relatively unknown author in a bookshop at this day and age. I'm really chuffed to death. Very northern expression, chuffed. But you know, so what then? You know, could you then kind of like get yourself confused with that blind, desperate hope that that's going to happen, and then you invest all your money into something, or you invest all your time into something, or you keep pursuing someone who doesn't respond to your emails or texts. So it's difficult, and the way to really know is to become curious and feel it in your body, because your body tells you, very much like the water and the Coke, it tells you. And so you even though you strongly want something to be true, and you're thinking in your head, because we're all taught to go, I can do it, I can do this, I can make this happen. And to, you know, even the idea of manifesting it, you know, the law of attraction, we've just got to be positive, we've got to be positive, we cannot let any negativity come in. Well, actually, fear and negativity do have a place. And sometimes we just have to listen and say, okay, it might not be this way round, but it might be another way round. But I need to expand and listen curiously to what it is that needs to happen. Before I had the radio show on LBC, it took 2 years to get. We're in negotiations for 2 years, and I was working really, really hard to make that happen. I was working hard to try and get sponsorship for the show. I was working hard to kind of like constantly having meetings with them, looking at like ways of bringing in people who could advertise, everything I could possibly do. It wasn't until I used my 2 very spiritual words and let go and said, show me what I am not getting here. What my block was I wanted to be liked. Now that sounds stupid, really, doesn't it? You want to be liked. But getting a radio show, I thought, would make me rather popular. It doesn't. Whilst you're talking on air, you get text messages coming in going, this is rubbish. You know, and while you're on air and you're talking and you're reading these things coming in on email and text message and and you get some funny ones as well, like, you know, could you carry on talking and not go to an ad break so I can finish what I'm doing? I think there's 089 numbers for that, sir. So it's very, you know, and it wasn't until I kind of said, okay, let go. And quite often people will always report that you get what you want the minute you stop trying for it. So a lot of it is about, again, the surrender of it at the same time as, you know, because you know, I really do believe what is for you will not pass you by.
I'll ask actually. I know you mentioned, I really believe this, you can't actually ask for it, you can't ask.
It has to be received.
Yes, but sometimes you get loads of it out of the blue.
Yeah.
And then the times you really want it, and it doesn't seem to be there.
Now, there's a very good reason for that. The times that you want it is usually when you're in the panic. So you're like, help, help! Now, interestingly enough, if you are in a really bad kind of like situation, so say for example a car crash, you would intuitively like react and then afterwards panic. So it's like you would suddenly find yourself opening the back door of the car, like 5 doors up, and finding 2 kids in the car. You would just, something just takes over, just something, So I'm not saying that intuition doesn't work in those moments. It's when you're really scared, like, I'm not making my bills, there's just other things that are kind of like happening. When you're in that kind of thing, you've gone into the part of the brain that is responsible for the 5 Fs. I've only mentioned the 4 Fs in the book, because one of them's food. But you go into the flight, fight, fear, food.
So would you call a premonition intuition that actually, comes true?
That is when your gut instinct jumps forward in time. And what's interesting about that is I don't do future predictions, I don't believe in future predictions. The main reason why I don't is because I think that you can create your future. I don't believe in the disempowerment. But when you suddenly get that feeling of, I know that this is going to happen, and you know it, I think that that's because you are in alignment with it, and it's a no-brain obvious thing.
You dreamt it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And dreams are very complicated because I think that we jump into other levels of consciousness and then we'll start having Doctor Who conversations about whether or not there is more than one parallel universe going on at the moment, and in actual fact that you just dreamt you're in the other because there's lots of different thoughts on where we are in dreams. Yeah, and string theory and everything else. So I think that, again, so it can get very complicated into whether or not the dream is actually you dreaming something that's already happened and we're actually all dead. Very complicated. Yes, so does that answer that a little bit? Good, okay, good. Other questions? I think I've got time for you. Yeah.
I'm a chartered civil engineer, so I'm based in data, statistics, analysis, and all this. And whilst over the last few years I've tried to relax, how can you suggest that I start forgetting the data side of things?
Oh, please don't forget it, because then you'll be rubbish at your job.
Yeah, but to allow this to come more into my feelings, I guess.
Well, what would you like to do with it?
Instead of anticipating what I think people need, is to perhaps
To know what people need.
To know what people need, to listen, perhaps, and things like that.
Well, the first thing is intuition needs purpose. So in order to work, it has to have a purpose. So you need to therefore then set the purpose. So what is the purpose? So say for example, like you said, it's to be able to help somebody so that you are anticipating what they need. Then you become curious about them. It's a different level of listening, really. So quite often there's 3 levels of listening. The first level of listening is, what are you saying and what has it got to do with me? Second level of listening is, what are you saying, what has it got to do with me, and how can I come up with an interesting response that makes me look cool? And then the third level of listening is when you're like listening to the space in between the words, you're listening to the breath, you're listening to the entire being of the human being. You're listening to the entire person. And by listening to the entire person, you're being in love with them and curious about them. I mean, I always say I'm actually in love with my clients the whole time that I'm with them, and I can't even remember their name when they leave. But because you need to have that, which is also why I don't work with all clients. So I'll know within 5 minutes of meeting somebody, and I usually say, look, we're not going to work together. Because you need to have that kind of connection, and if you don't have that kind of connection, then it doesn't work. So the first thing is to have purpose. Why do you want to assist or help this person? And then the other one is to be curious about the person, and then that will mean that you're receiving the information from your intuition.
Thank you.
Good.
Becky, dowsing.
Yes.
Pendulum dowsing, is that somatic?
Yeah, well, do you know, pendulum dowsing works best when you're looking for water. And that's because we're made of something like 75 or 80% water, so that you're actually becoming a conduit. And I mean, I studied this for ages, and I spent ages going with the pendulum, you keep your hand in really tight so you can't move it. And I was saying things like, am I wearing black knickers? No. It's true, I'm not. Am I wearing red knickers? No. This is great. Am I wearing pink knickers with blue spots? Yes, you. And I thought this was brilliant. So I went on and on and on, saying, where does this information come from? Where's this information coming from? Until finally it said the information was coming from God. I went, oh shit, sorry for bothering you. Now, I don't know. I just gave up with pendulums. I don't know. So I gave up. Because pendulums, the reason why I wanted to consult pendulums was to avoid pain. That was all I wanted. I wanted to have somebody else to be responsible from me. You know, so I wanted to ask questions so that I wasn't responsible, so that the pendulum was responsible. And I grew out of that. Because really, I don't think life is about avoiding pain. Life is about experiencing pain and being really happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, I use it to find things, and I just wonder about the body's memory.
Yeah, you see, I...
all the time.
Well, if you lose things all the time, you do know where that thing is.
Well, this is what I'm
Yeah, and so you're accessing your subconscious mind and it's showing you where it is. So yeah, I say stick with what you're doing, because that's not bad at all. The amount of times I get asked, Becky, I've lost my wedding ring, can you find it? No, it doesn't work like that. No, I can't. And if I do, I'm keeping it for your stupid question. Good. So, one last really quick question. And
It's
then,
not
yeah.
an ask, it's, I can add a little bit if you want about pendulums. About how
Tell you what, in the break, you two talk,
Yeah.
and anyone else who wants to know about pendulums, find these two, and then you can do that in the break. I just wanted to tell you about 4 things I've got coming up, 3 of which are in Bristol. I do stand-up comedy and mix it with telling people stuff that I shouldn't know about them in the audience, politely, kindly and nicely. And it's a really good laugh, and it's at the Fringe in Clifton, so that's the date of the next one. 22nd, that WTF is not what you think it is, it's What the Frock. And that's a comedy night at the Square Club on the 22nd, where me and another 3 comedians are going to be doing some stuff. 4th of April, I've got a book launch at Foyles with free booze. So, 4th of April at Foyles. And then the 13th of October in London, I'm speaking at I Can Do It, which is a 2-day seminar with people like Neil Donald Walsh and Sonia Cat and lots of really famous people that I'm going to be scared of. Or not. I've got copies of my book, and I'm based in Bristol, so you know you'll see me around. And thanks for coming.